For the section of the exhibition which we've called Communicating Faith, which deals with religious texts, comparing the ways that they were used, so we've got texts for prayer, we've got texts for presentation to great people, we've got texts that have been translated and texts that have been recovered having been lost. The oldest item that we have in this part of the exhibition is a text for prayer. It's the so-called Nash papyrus. It dates from the 2nd century before Christ. It's actually several fragments of papyrus containing the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, and the so-called Shema prayer, which is the bit of the Old Testament which starts, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one." Until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it was actually the oldest surviving manuscript of any part of the Hebrew Bible. This is another text for prayer, but it's an Islamic prayer book. It's the text known as the Dalal al-Khairat. It's an example of a prayer text very different from the Nash papyrus and the other items that we have. Well, another sub-theme in the religion section of the exhibition is the translation of texts, which could be a source of great controversy. This looks like a very ancient object. It's actually only 18th century, but it's a translation of the Gospels, the Christian Gospels, into Ethiopic. Not only is it written in this very evocative ancient script, but it also has rather splendid illustrations of the 4 Gospel writers. This is St. Luke. This is actually the only printed book that we have in the religion section of the exhibition, and it's a copy of Tyndale's translation of the New Testament, printed in Antwerp in 1534. Translating the Bible was an act of heresy at the time, according to the mainstream church. The one true translation was the Vulgate into Latin, and only the church had the right to interpret it to the people. Tyndale felt that even the ploughboys at their plough should be able to recite the scripture in their own language. And of course, for his pains, he was strangled and burnt as a heretic 2 years after this translation was published. These are leaves from a Quran written in the 9th century. It was once a very large book bound in 30 different parts. The leaves were subsequently scattered abroad. There are other fragments surviving now in Oxford, in Istanbul and in Cairo. It would be nice to think with modern digitization techniques that we could reunite this really rather beautiful Quran, at least virtually. This is another text recovered. It's arguably one of the stars of the show, and it's also one of the oldest things we've got. It's the Codex Zacyntheus. It's a parchment book where the leaves have been scraped and rewritten. What they rewrote on this were, in the 11th or 12th century, was a text from the Gospels, but underneath it is a very early text of the Gospel of St. Luke. Now, the undertext, this very early undertext, was first deciphered in the 19th century. It's now possible using modern imaging techniques to get a much more precise image of what this book would have looked like when it was first written in the 6th or 7th centuries. And once it comes out of the exhibition, we're hoping to be able to do just that.
Dear world, yours